Okay, as we launch off into this discussion, I want to just call your attention to something not available to you until the book is out, and that is Appendix 2, because this really does cover a lot of the questions and issues that would arise here. The one topic, I mean, there's really a lot in here, but for people who want to go on to other sources, this table, actually earlier on I skipped right over it, but in this appendix, it covers over a lot of the topics in evolution that have been covered in what we've read. And this table shows how what you find in creation and its causes gets recapitulated in other later sources. Now, most of you guys haven't had access to these, but we are working right now on an edition of all this stuff. So this will be the next book to come out. So, so you see in the left-hand column, creation and its causes, the different page numbers there, how they correlate to Ramju's explanations in pencil, that's a manuscript, Ramju's explanations in green pen, another manuscript, God, Creator, and Creation in the Mere Message, Ramju's book, Meher Baba's Philosophy and Teachings, and Ghani's rewrite in the Meher Baba Journal. So this would be helpful in seeing how all these sources correlate. So all these later sources were drawing on what we're reading right now. So that's one thing, a textual thing. Also, did I jump over it? I think I may have. Yeah, okay. So now this section here covers the different kingdoms of evolution. He didn't use the word kingdoms yet, but you'll find it in God Speaks. You know, stone, metal, vegetation, worm, fish, bird, animal, and so forth. There are a lot of questions that come up about this. So if you look at the various discussions that appear in Baba's literature up through God Speaks. So this really reviews a lot of these questions. And also it comes to the topic of transitional species. And we've seen a number of those, what we read today. The word Barzax has been used. Baba doesn't himself appear to have used that word, but it's a perfectly good word. It's an Arabic word. For this. Those are transitional species on the border between one kingdom and another. And this section will have some significant quotes on that from later stuff. Like this one is from God Speaks, where that topic of these Barzacs or transitional species is discussed. And even more useful is this passage from Beams, which talks about them more. I'm just letting you know what some of the content is here. Also, there's a large section on the 5 turns. We saw that last time, where the human form is going through various turns through the course of evolution. This whole concept is very problematic because the principal dictation on it that we had last time appears to have been garbled in its transcription. So this reviews all of that, you know, what these 5 turns are, or maybe it also goes over the 4 elements, as you can see here. So anyway, I just want you to let you know that's there, because this is a topic that's going to engage inevitably a lot of discussion in the years ahead. Okay, that's what I had to say on that.
Okay, if anybody has questions, go ahead and raise your hands. And let's see what we got. Naren Prasad, please unmute.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Nice to see your word.
Yeah, nice to see you. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
You tuned into this one.
Yeah. I just was raising to this point used a term called plasmid in your footnotes
Yeah.
before figure 33.
Mm. What, the phosmids, did you say?
Plasmid, plasmid,
Let's see.
plasmid biology. Yeah, before that.
What, the
Before
note
that.
here? Yeah,
uh,
okay. The lower note, perhaps Baba is referring to a phosmid or some other insect of this kind.
No, plasmid is, no, this is your own word, plasmid, if I'm not wrong.
Trust me.
Phosmid. I think it's a general term, a category of insects.
Okay.
You can look it
Well,
up on, you know, the internet. It shows images of a lot of these.
Okay.
Plasmid, not plasmid. It's
Yeah.
H
That's
instead of
what,
L.
that,
Phosmid, yeah.
so, I mean, I thought it is plasmid.
It's hard to
Yes.
see it because it's so small. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a definition. Any of an order of large cylindrical or sometimes flattened, chiefly tropical insects, such as a walking stick, that have long
Okay.
legs, strictly phytophagous habits.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I
Right.
were more skilled on sharing things,
Fine.
I could pull up images and show you some of them. You'd see just what I meant. These look just like parts of plants, but they're actually insects. This is just a speculation. Baba never said this.
Not a critical point. So.
Yeah.
Hey, yes, ma'am. So, hey, what can you go over? I mean, I couldn't completely read that sentence or that paragraph actually, where you said lantern falling on mirrors. I don't know what page it was on. In the reflection, many moon reflection reflecting on the shadow.
Is it this one here? Let's see. Huh. I mean, I know we had that before. I'm not remembering today.
There it is right there.
Is it
Now,
right
just
there?
as countless light globes, we find countless cooled down worlds. Right, Ram?
Okay.
Yes, somewhere it says the reflection, in the mirror.
Hmm.
So,
I think he's talking about, are you talking about with earlier discussions? Not
no,
today.
just today's
Oh,
discussion.
today?
Yeah.
Farther, more pages forward.
Hmm. Let's see. Yeah, where was that?
If you don't find it, it's all right.
It might be
Right
here.
there, right there.
As you remember, we illustrated why worlds A, B,
Yeah.
and C have the number of suns that they do, etc., through the simile of the light of the lantern falling on mirrors and creating multiple reflections, which shine back on the shadows, representing the worlds opposite them. That
Mhm,
was referring back to like this topic here,
mhm.
and also this figure. If you remember this figure, this is illustrating the light of the light globe and the shadow being a world and the image of the shadow falling in space and the light
Yeah.
of the light globe illuminating that shadow.
Mhm.
So this is a passage referring back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you,
I also have one more question. So if you see Vedanta, in Vedanta, it's associated with 5 elements.
Yeah.
The fifth
Akash.
element being space. Yeah, space.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is it combined with something here or?
I know that's a good topic. There are many topics here that really will have to be explored as time went on. The Greeks had these 4 elements, although they did have something they called ether. But yeah, you're right that the Indian cosmology has Akash as the 5th. And these 5 elements in Indian cosmology are actually associated with the 5 senses too. There's kind
Yes.
of an integrated psychology. But we did have Akash with Prana and Akash. Seems to be on a different order of significance here. So
Yeah.
this is an issue that's going to have to get studied and worked out.
Mhm. So
You're right about
last
that.
question. Yeah, last question. So I
Mm.
read somewhere Baba associated animals with fire,
Yeah.
apparently because they're always in heat. Is that true?
Yeah, but I think it's that would be one part of it. The sexual drive that's so strong, and also eating. What he refers to as eating here, that they just want to eat all the time.
Yeah.
He gives that example of that elephant in. He would go see that elephant all the time in Bombay. I think I saw a big elephant there that in Pune. Actually, Jal, the first time I went there, Baba's brother took us to Pune where there was an elephant that
Mhm.
Jal said Baba would often visit.
Yeah.
But Baba just says it just eats all the time.
It was a circus elephant, right? So
Yeah.
before it's, yeah, I read that, yeah. And I also want to respond to somebody who said less and less people, Christina. So, less and less people are reading, but I can definitely tell you, I was at a Silence Day, this Silence Day. There were too many people, I felt, there were too many people. So in my estimation, guesstimate, there were probably about 3,000 people, during the Silence Day, both on the hill and in Lower Mehrabad put together.
Mm.
And it was very warm. It's really, heartening to see all these people go through, the hardships, especially in Lower Mehrabad. It was raining, it was slushy, muddy, and nothing bothered them, so which was great to see.
It's a good thing though, isn't it, Ron?
Oh, it's a great thing. And most Indians believe, you go, you use your heart to go to God, not intellect.
Mm. Mm.
So that's maybe one thing why people in India don't read much, but they do more bhajans.
But we're going to have to get used to sharing Baba with the masses. Thank you,
Yeah.
Rob. Elizabeth.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, mostly about 2 figures. It was hard to see the titles of the figures as well as the body of the figures. I'm specifically referring to what is either table or figure 33, and then the most questions are with figure 34. So I didn't get the title for figure 33 and I didn't see it. Oh, there it is, the 4 elements.
The 4 elements, yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
this is mapping the evolutionary journey on a circle, which shows it in terms of the 4 elements: earth, water, air, and fire. Baba, by the way, you wouldn't have known from Discourses or God Speaks that the 4 elements were part of Meher Baba's cosmological account, but they are. It came up in, as Ram was saying, in ancient Indian cosmology and ancient Greek also, where these elements were there. But modern science kind of construed the elements, kind of rejected it because it's thinking in terms of particles and the particle constituency of the material world. But we could go into this another time, or we have time for it. But Bob, these are clearly elements of the imagination, not realized elements of the physical material world. And I'll just show you quickly where is it? Darn.
What do you mean by elements of the imagination, not of the physical world? Because these are in the physical world. These four
Well,
elements.
they manifest there, but they really originate in the imagination.
As the physical world does.
Yeah, I better not. That's a big. We really need to bring infinite intelligence to bear on this, which many people here will not know. But this chart was included very specifically for this reason. I'll just tell you that much. Appendix 4, because it gives important information bearing on this very point. I'll just leave it at that because it would be too complicated to explain and would really take us into infinite intelligence.
Okay, so one more comment about that. In the indigenous cultures, of course, like Native Americans, the elements are really critical. And the same thing in Mexico about the world being on the back of a turtle or something like that.
Sure.
But the other one was figure 34, which to me was more critical than 33. So yeah, I was just trying to see it better. That's called evolution and the Plasmid. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you these figures, remember?
Yeah,
You
I
can
know.
find one of the diagrams in God Speaks is directly related to this. There's a whole lineage of this particular concept, diagrammatic concept, produced a bunch of figures over the years.
And why is that? You see that black dot that's on the edge of the circle that represents human
Yeah.
on the right side? And why is it calling it the cardinal form, meaning cardinal just body?
Principal, major,
Okay.
highly significant.
Okay. And
so Baba later used the term kingdom of evolution. He wasn't using that term yet back in these days, early times.
okay. And so I'm trying to look at the bottom of the left side and relate it to I'm looking at that line that comes from the top right to the bottom left. What is that?
Well, it's just showing that the movement of the divine theme, again, Baba hadn't introduced that term yet, but it's what he's talking about, is from the achievement of the human form, then it then enters into the path. And this circular movement we in turn interpreted to be signifying the turning that happens when you enter the path.
And is the yellow, orange, gold thing, is that the Atma that is always the same?
Yeah, yeah.
And then why is 2 skipped over?
Well, we were following the diagrammatic source in a lot of these elements, but this seems to be a brace encompassing the first to third planes. It's inclusive. And it looks like the subtle world, although Baba wasn't talking in those terms yet. And 5 and 6 looks like it's referring to the mental world. And 4th is the threshold. 4th plane is the threshold.
The Maha Yoga. Okay.
Mahayogi, that's the
Yogi.
human individuality at these various stations. Baba had begun to introduce subtle world and mental world, but he would kind of flip back and forth, where sometimes he would use subtle to indicate the entire 6 planes.
Okay.
Thank you. By the way, if anybody's really interested in the elements, I think that the Buddha gave the most amazing explanation of elements in the Abhidharma.
Oh.
So that really breaks
The
it down.
Chinese had their own version of it.
Yeah.
They're a bit different. They have wood and so forth in it.
In the Abhidharma, he explains the qualities of those elements and how they move, and it's pretty interesting stuff. Anyway, Jim Wilson, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Ward, I kind of feel like I'm a little bit stuck in a briar patch with my clothes caught on a thorn. I can't seem to get forward from it. And that is this the difference between the analogy aspect of what Baba is describing in these globes and everything versus the gross world reality kind of, you kind of touched on it a little bit ago.
Yeah.
And saying that infinite intelligence with the idea of imagination is the universe and stuff like that.
Mm.
But with regards to talking to the boys, when he is describing these globes and all these moons and stuff like that, and mirrors reflecting and stuff like that, it gets me a little bit hung up. And I wonder if you could shed some light on whether or not this is an analogy that he's presenting that has only subtle significance, or is it really, it has gross significance?
Mm. Well, broadly speaking, that's a question that readers and students of these works are going to have to contemplate and resolve in the decades ahead. But I mean, my own reflections are just preliminary. Naturally, I thought a lot about this more than other people because I've been working on this text and others are encountering it for the first time. But it does, Baba does not seem in these lectures to the boys to have differentiated between whether the things he is describing appear on the gross plane or the subtle plane or somewhere else. And what I personally think about that is it has to do with the age group he was describing. He was giving vivid, visualizable symbols or pictures. And he wasn't giving them the analytic apparatus as to whether this is gross or subtle or something else. He wasn't encumbering them with that kind of understanding. Whereas with an adult audience, he probably would have. But something like this, I mean, I am presuming in this chart, for example, that when he's talking about these three worlds, A, B, and C, that these three worlds actually really do exist in the gross plane. But the logical derivation of them obviously is not gross plane related. I mean, again, if there were three worlds, A, B, and C, with human life in our solar system, well, why haven't they been observed? And also, for anything like this to work, you would have to have these three planets right next to each other, orbiting around the sun parallel to each other for this to work. It wouldn't even work then. I'm just bringing out the obvious point that this does not correspond to the gross reality of our solar system. So it looks like there's and the light globe, as I've mentioned before, there are textual indications, we'd have to go over them one by one, indicating that these light globes are not gross world. So there seems to be an intermingling of the gross and the subtle in the picture that he's giving here. And Baba does not appear to have tried to sort those elements out. Again, I'm assuming this is related to the fact he was, I think, kind of opening the inner vision of these boys to the reality of these things. And that was his focus. But here's another thing. If you're going to talk about these as a metaphoric system of light globes and shadows and reflections and rays and all that sort of thing, and elsewhere, earlier on, you may have forgotten, but he correlated some of this with the ocean and waves and drops and wave bubbles and drop bubbles. He clearly correlated these. So you could make the argument these are metaphoric systems, but I'm not sure that that is entirely adequate, because apparently these light globes produce actual suns as part of our physical reality. So it seems that these different aspects of the truth have consequences in the gross world. So simply to call them metaphors is not quite adequate to the case, it seems to me. So there's going to have to be some deep thinking about this in the decades ahead.
And Baba seemed to say somewhere that science will begin to understand this better even.
He did say that, yeah.
Yeah. that what we understand as the material world, he says, we really don't understand it.
Mhm. In the
Yeah.
East-West gathering, I may have mentioned where Baba talked about there being innumerable universes. Baba did say that scientists would come to understand this in the future. And back in 1962, nobody in the scientific world was talking about, innumerable universes. And now they most certainly are.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Ward.
Hmm.
All right, Lindsay.
I have two questions, but I want to also address the question that Jim just asked. I think there's another different, a different perspective would be what would be the experience of being with Baba while he talks. And I think there's something called, I work with something as a therapist called dual consciousness, where you can have two levels of perception at the same time.
Hmm.
And my husband and I were watching a Baba movie the other day, and it appeared that Baba said something to someone, sort of Baba's face was hidden in the corner of this man's face. And then the man did something. And I remember Tom Riley saying that when he was with Baba alone, it was as though Baba was speaking to him directly. And yet another level of consciousness would say, Baba is not saying anything. That there would be the so-called gross world or the normal gross world experience, and then another experience of perception, and that two levels of perception don't even have to be particularly related to each other. I don't think you have to be seeing these charts and pictures to be getting what Baba is saying at a different level. So I just would comment that I think most of us have the capacity to access information at several different layers, and that might be another way of perceiving, the truth or the reality, in addition to what you're explaining, which is there are things we don't know that will be perceived in the future in the gross world.
Thank you, Lindsay. That's quite helpful.
Yeah. And then thank you. And then the two questions I have is in one of the lecture, maybe the first lecture, Baba says that the four elements were created in quick succession. Does he say what that succession is, or is there an implication? Did you look at that?
I tried to go through the different references to it, and I'm not at all convinced that the order of elements he gave was ever meaningful.
Okay, yeah. Okay, and then the second question is maybe it's chart 34, but at any rate, it's where the human does the turn and starts up through the planes. Are the planes associated with the elements at all?
No, there's nothing, there's no indication of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. I look forward to meeting you in Asheville soon, by the way.
Oh, I do too. Thank you.
Okay, Christina. Christina.
Hello. Hey,
Hey,
Ward.
Christina, J Baba.
Hey, Bob. I'm hoping that you can give me feedback on some thinking. That's kind of how I operate. So at the very beginning, I had a thought, how does Prana Nakash connect with the light globes? It's just this general, vague. And immediately the lecture starts off with how they connect. So it's a natural progression, I guess. Makes total sense. And to my mind, didn't he at the beginning of all these lectures talk about how all of this is thinking? Wasn't that part of the very beginning?
He never really brings that concept up. You know, the thinking imagination distinction and the interactions between thinking and imagination seems to be an idea that Baba uniquely explained in Infinite Intelligence and
Mm.
nowhere else. And he
Oh,
never
okay.
really explained it to the boys.
I see. Okay, I
Yeah.
thought maybe I was reading it into it and kind of
I
thought.
mean, Baba
it was more-
uses other terms like knowing, but I don't think
Yeah.
that knowing is the same thing as thinking
No,
infinite
no.
intelligence terms at all. Thinking in infinite intelligence is a huge concept.
Huge, huge,
Yeah.
huge, huge.
And
Well,
there's nothing quite like that here.
oh, okay. Well, to my mind, it seems like this, the elements, they seem to be the context for the upabog or the taking of experience. And the forms are the imagination or the actual methodology for taking
Uh-huh.
upabog. So
Yeah.
Pran and Akash are like the structure or the structure of false thinking. They're like laws. It's like the fundamental core laws. This image right here that we have, it's called the 7 moons, but to my mind, it is the laws of how, at the very essential, smallest bit of movement of false thinking, how it starts the dominoes. And that 4 + 2 + 1, that's 7.
Yeah.
And then the image of the hairs, again, the hairs are the imagination or the universes, and the head is the thinking, the essential, where the thinking comes forth, and it takes its imagination as universes. So yeah, so it seems to me that I can see how infinite intelligence or the material in infinite intelligence would be the next step in this for grown-ups. And and how it would relate directly and explicitly, Pran and Akash, with false thinking. And that idea of false thinking is so central to all of this. Sounds like you don't have an issue with that.
Well, the thing is, this topic is really an important one. We would need a group that has really studied infinite intelligence to work our way through this. It appears, I mean, Pran and Akash, just to be really quickly on this, infinite intelligence is it does have something on Pran and Akash.
Yes, of
and
course.
It says very explicitly that they belong to the domain of the imagination.
Correct.
And false thinking comes into play not within the imagination itself, but when a Atma or thinking thinks the imagination. So these are within the realm of the pure imagination itself. And it appears to me that the 4 elements are also within the domain of the pure imagination. Now they
yes, it
come
makes
into,
total sense. Yeah, the imagination is associated with the form. It is the methodology.
And so the forms would come out of that.
Exactly.
And the thinking, false thinking comes into play when you've got Jivatmas who are identifying with it.
Exactly.
And this spreads the vast canvas of the imaginary universe in which then the soul can make its journey. So
and
this
all
is
of
really,
these forms, the cascade of forms, and they follow that model of the globes. It is that cascade. To my mind, that's the model. Is that the worlds? Yeah, and then the last thing is this. You know, so many people in the West. I can't speak for the East. There are some people here, surely, who can, but and I would assume it. You know, it is similar. But in the West, we are all so deeply saturated with the Darwin model of evolution. I mean, up to the highest courts in the land, you know, I mean, it is so central to our thinking. And this what we're reading here indicates that there's it's like, to my mind, proof of the serious flaw in prioritization that the Darwinian theory has. And it's the focus on survival as the motivator rather than realization as the motivator. And
yeah, infinite intelligence makes the important point. I won't go into this too much. Once again,
Yeah,
we really
yeah,
will
yeah.
need a subsequent seminar where it
Yep.
integrates this with infinite intelligence. But it
Yep.
does say that all the forms of evolution are created at once. And there is no evolution in the creation of the forms of evolution. There is evolution in the realization of the forms of evolution. But the
Right,
forms that
right.
get realized are all there from the beginning.
It's like the how the human form is latent within, say,
Right,
right.
right.
It's all latent, and it is all just a matter of it unfolding, but the trajectory is there.
Right. It's all
Yeah.
inherent from the beginning.
I just don't
By
even.
the way, notice we had some really important stuff on the human form today.
Yeah.
Also, I hope you guys noticed the sentence, I'm going to tell you a secret, Baba says. Each individual is its own universe. Man, I could talk
Correct.
about that for hours. That's
Correct.
a huge point.
And I keep picturing the boys at that moment,
Yeah.
you know, their eyes widening like, what did you just say? Yeah.
We're going to
I
come.
just don't know how this how a shift will take place from prioritizing survival. I mean, I have an advanced business degree, and survival is the core model for everything. And I just don't see how that will shift over to a model of realization. It would have to be like dinosaur catastrophe level. I mean, I don't know.
Well, let's hope not. Christina, do I hear a dog barking in the background?
No, you do not.
Okay. I wondered if maybe your cats had progressed while
They're evolving, but not that
no,
fast.
Not that right. Okay. Thank you, dear. Ram. You need to unmute, huh?
Unmute.
There.
I'm here. I'm still awake, which is surprising. So, my favorite topic, the elements. So, the gross body comprises of the 5 elements. Let's, for time being, forget about the space element. So the way they relate it is, the fire is, the body has to maintain certain temperature, 98.4 Fahrenheit. And your body is made of water, and you definitely need to breathe. And the last is earth, and the earth is the one that gives the body the shape. So that's the belief. And in Vedanta they say the space is because you have to stand. You're in sit, so you do need the earth to and the space. You occupy space. So and that's what they say. And the manifestation actually is, it's in the causal body, it's both your gross body and also the subtle body are in unmanifested form. The sole purpose of actually the causal body actually is to manifest these. So that's how the bodies are created. With the elements.
Yeah, the only Baba really doesn't go into matters of psychology here. The only place where he did, we saw last time, which is this psychology. By psychology, I don't mean modern Western psychology, but the structure of the false self, of the Jivatma. This is the only point that previous lecture where Baba went into that a little bit. But that really wasn't something he brought up with the boys very much. That's a really significant topic in itself. Yeah, by the way, in Vedanta and Samkhya and There are 6, as they call them, darshanas, astika darshanas, orthodox darshanas in ancient Hinduism. And a number of them go into this topic of correlating the elements with the senses. And Indian psychology has 5 senses, manas being, or akash being the 5th element. And each is correlated with a sense, and each is, correlated with an element of nature. So that's a topic really worth exploring.
Yeah.
That whole way of looking at things has totally gotten dropped in the modern world. Baba never really quite talked about, but here he brought up the elements. That is a significant new part of his cosmology that we're seeing here. And this is the most developed discussion of that topic that I know of in any of Meher Baba's discourses.
Thank you,
Thank
Ron.
you. Thank you.
Marianne.
Oh, hi. Thank you. This is
Mm.
so wonderful being here. And I decided to share something. I don't think it's sparking more conversation about and discussion about this, but I was so fascinated with the hair. And I'm here in New York City, and something I was working on before COVID was my comedy routine at one of the Baba meetings about Mahapralaya, because I find I need a sense of humor about all of this. And so when I saw that hair, it looked like my hair kind of when I was young and had some color in it. And then I ran through every hairdo I ever had, because I was born in the 30s, and how you coiffed your hair was so, so important, and how you presented your hair. And it wasn't until the 60s, there was kind of a liberation with the wild hair coming out and letting go of all of those forms. So I kind of pictured me making a chart of all of my hairdos and what my sense of consciousness was during this hair time. And I thought, well, this would be in my Mahapralaya comedy routine, that I think this would be included, because at the end it says here you get it all shaved off.
That's right.
So I just had to put in my 2 cents about this, because without my sense of humor, I get really bogged down. So thank you. I just needed to share that about the hair.
If you imagine a Baba lover from the 60s who had to get a haircut to get a job, do you know what the lover's complaint of such a person would be? He would say, "Where is my hair?" Ha 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 ha.
So I'll keep working on my routine. Thank you.
Well, I hope we'll get to see that routine. It sounds like fun. Thank you, dear. And Wendy.
That was awesome. I love that. So when I first came to Baba, I had spent over 30 years studying Indigenous cultures. So, that does the elements in the medicine wheel and da. When I came, the piece that made me know that I was in the right place was in God Speaks with the evolution from the gases, stones, da. It was like an explosion inside of me that, and now I understand with our Indigenous people that have held on to their practice, how they're so connected to all these elements, the animals, everything. And today I can actually say, it's not the same, but for the first time, I actually think I was understanding some of it with the overlay of that. Anyway, whatever that's worth, I just feel really good that I feel like I understand some stuff today. Thank you, Ward. That was awesome. Thank
you. Some of this we've seen, in evolution and the correlation with elements. There are many branches of study that will need to get explored in the future, but one of them might be correlating different conceptualizations of the elements within different cultures, how they relate to each other.
Yeah, because when with the wheel, there's all these
Yeah.
layers of layers of layers
Yeah.
just one time you go around. And this is just adding to it. It's,
Yeah.
it's exciting.
There's a whole Chinese system. I think there are 6 elements, but they're different.
Yes.
There's, I think metal is one, wood is one,
Mhm.
and one of the 4 is missing from the Chinese system. I'm forgetting which one it is. Anyway, it'd be very interesting to go
Yeah.
into that.
Yeah. Well, to me, if something's truthful, it shows up in many areas.
Yeah.
This is happening with.
I mean, we have Pran and Akash. Well, it seems that in Chinese metaphysics, the concept of Qi is related to Pran. I would think so. And that would be well worth studying.
Right, right. The only one I'm struggling with is the fire and the animals, because that doesn't fit with any of the
Yeah,
teachings.
I see.
That doesn't mean that, is right or wrong. That's,
Right.
I'm working on that one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, great.
Mm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, my turn. Ward, I think this is a good time for me to pin you down on something.
Okay.
Okay. During what I'm calling Creation and Its Causes Week here in Myrtle Beach, I think that we can talk Thursday into getting us time at the Circle of Friends on, let's say, just for the sake of argument, the 25th, October 25th, where we can do a session on thinking the imagination from infinite intelligence.
I'd be very happy to do that. There's so much to cover in Creation and Its Causes. I'd be very willing to do that. It's I mean, I could explain. To understand what that basic concept is really necessary if you're ever going to bring infinite intelligence into relation with that. I'd be happy to do that if people want it.
That would be awesome. We can also live stream it.
Live stream what?
Live stream it on Baba's Zoom.
Sure.
There's Thursday. What do you think, Thursday?
Yes, we will take anything and everything we can get from Ward. So we're very happy to accommodate every day, every other day, twice a day, whatever he's willing to give us.
Well, we're going to nail that one down then.
Okay.
I think it's really obvious. I mean, it's going to take people a while before they've read this book and assimilating it. But clearly, infinite intelligence, this book, and God Speaks have to be brought into significant relation with each other. I don't think there are problems. By the way, we didn't really talk about this before, but I'll just mention it. The whole creation narrative, I've got a real full presentation on this topic. I can give some time, but the creation narrative here was all about Prana and Akash, right? Remember back in those earlier lectures, Baba never mentions why it happened, which is the whim, God's whim to know himself. That does not come up here. Whereas it's central to God Speaks and discourses in other places, many other places. God asked, who am I? And that's what motivated it. I've got a lot to say about that. So there's something that needs to get connected. Here it's Prana and Akash.
Maybe
that sounds great.
Let's put that on the list. For
Baba never, in this series of talks, never raises the question or answers that why did that happen with Prana and Akash? He just says that it did happen. I've got a lot to say about that.
All right, we'll shoot for the 27th of October for that one. I'm writing
You could call it the whim. You could call it the whim and the dream, because it really is.
Yeah.
No. So we'll let Ward own that. So Christina is next. You there, Christina?
Yeah, I had a little trouble unmuting. I very much appreciated what was it Wendy said about indigenous cultures. Is that you, Wendy? Shake your head. Okay. and comparing indigenous cultures to, say, our culture, the American culture. I don't know, I'm saying Indian culture maybe, but I don't know because I'm not part of an Indian culture. So I will just say about the culture I know. There's very much an objectification of the world. In other words, the world is comprised of things that I will use. And the indigenous cultures seem to have a different view of the world in that there's a form of empathy as the, say, the animal or the tree has a sense of itself also. And that's completely not happening in our culture. And the development of a lack of empathy has a name, and it is sociopathology. And in this culture, the lack of empathy and the extensive demonstration of sociopathology, I think is, it's like a direct correlation with the objectification of the world. And it doesn't have a good trajectory, and anyone can see that, I think. So I like that the model that's presented here, which I believe to be an essential and true model, is not the objectification of all of these, all the elements. It's not like we are observing this thing. It's very much, we are this thing. This thing is part of our legacy, and we are a part of it. We're just a point on the flow of the divine journey. So perhaps that is a key that will shift the future, and that is my hope. Thank you.
Really to give a pitch to this, a really major book talking about the civilizational matters and trajectories of cultures, and I'll say it a conceptualization of the descent of modern civilization into materialism is Francis Brabazon's Stay with God. It's a huge topic. Half the book is on that, and that's not our topic here, but I've studied. I'm the editor of a forthcoming edition, so I've really studied it.
You've really gotten into it, Ward. I think that's wonderful.
I've really studied it a lot, and Baba did say it was second in importance only to God Speaks. So it's a really major book dealing
the issue
with
of materialism is huge. Yeah. But
Francis is quite deals with many aspects of this. I wish
he's like
I'd met
James
him.
Joyce. He's like, you can annotate him for decades.
Yeah, you can. I wish I'd met him. The bum had this really terrible habit of living in Australia. I keep telling them every time I go there, they've really got to move the place. It's just too far away.
My dad said Francis Brabazon was the one, Francis Brabazon and Maherji were the two that he connected with most significantly. Probably because Maherji was the one who, was really putting the actions, putting Baba's orders into actions with, the logistics. But, and Francis, because he was like a Westerner,
Thank you, Christina. And for those who don't know, your father was Tom Riley.
A guy.
Yeah, a guy named Tom Riley, who many of you may know.
Yeah.
All right, we have Wendy K for our last question, and then we're going to wind it up.
Not a question, just to respond to Christina. One of the things that is a golden rule is that whatever you're doing, make sure that you're conscious that it is impacting the next 7 generations. So when 7 keeps coming up here, it takes me to that. So whatever you're doing out there in the world, whatever you're saying, it's 7 years out. That's all I'm going to say. You can
Okay.
think about that.
So do you have
You know,
anything you want to wind up, Ward?
Let me just call attention. I mean, we covered so much today, but this thing on the number 7, there's really a lot there. There really is. And I mentioned this sentence, but I'm going to mention it again. Each individual human being is the universe. There's a lot in that. And this is the one single categorical statement of that point that I know of in any of Meher Baba's discourses. And I think it's hugely important. I could really relate it to a lot of things, but also the 7 openings in the face. There's a whole chapter on God Speaks where Baba goes into that, entering in through that. The 14 parts of the body, the 7, Nakash, the head, the throat is associated with foam, bliss is associated with the gross body. So there's really a lot to be said about that. And all of this, Baba says, has as its source the clashing of prana and akash. So it seems that to me that prana and akash within the domain of the imagination is really the primordial duality. It breaks into, on the prana side, into 7. And we're going to see that in the last 3 lectures here. So there's really major stuff there. I mean, we'd have to spend like 2 whole sessions just on this one section here that's just a page, that's all. So he really was giving concentrated material. He's been doing it throughout, but he certainly did in what we covered today. So that's just the last thing I wanted to mention.
Well, very good. And I think it was a wonderful session. So I hope that most of you can unmute and join us in saying the Beloved's Prayer.
By the way, have we worked out when the next one will be?
We're going to talk about that in a minute, as soon as I end the record.
Okay.
So let's say the Beloved Prayer together, and then we're going to talk about our going forward. Okay. Beloved God, help us all
love you more and more, and more and more, still yet more, till we become worthy of union with you.
Help us all.
Help us all to hold fast to Baba's Dhamma till the very end.
Avatar,
Our Meher Baba Ki Jai. Meher Baba Ki Jai. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai.
Right. So you want to stop the share, Lord?